Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In a small, weather-beaten town nestled in the shadow of a dense, unyielding forest, whispers lingered like the fog that often rolled in from the mountain. The town of Eldridge was not unfamiliar with tragedy. Crime was a quiet undercurrent that surged with the oscillation of everyday life. People went about their routines, but the unremarkable homes along Maple Street concealed secrets beneath peeling paint and overgrown lawns. The night of October 14th, 1997, was uncharacteristically still. A waning moon cast a silvery light that accompanied the chill of autumn air. It was on this night that Sarah Bennett, a vibrant 22-year-old woman, would vanish without a trace. For her family, a routine dinner had unfolded into a harrowing ordeal. The last sighting of Sarah was reported by her neighbor, who noted she had been walking towards the woods with her dog, a shaggy golden retriever named Mac. By the time authorities were alerted, it was too late. The search began as the sun set, shadows lengthening in the trees that had once offered a playful sanctuary. Search teams combed through the underbrush, their flashlights slicing through the darkness, calling out for Sarah in vain. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, hope began to wane. The close-knit community banded together, plastering missing flyers on every storefront and lamppost. For many in Eldridge, the question was no longer a matter of if Sarah would return, but rather what had happened to her beneath the endless canopy of the wood. The victim, Sarah Bennett, was the kind of person who radiated warmth, her laughter dancing in the air like golden rays of sunlight. Growing up in Eldridge, she became the heart of her small family, her parents often referring to her as their beacon of joy. Friends described her as compassionate and driven, someone who put her heart into everything she did, from her studies to the volunteer work she engaged in at the local animal show. After graduating from college with a degree in environmental science, Sarah found her calling in conservation work. She had a deep-rooted love for nature, spending countless hours hiking and camping in the wild that surrounded Eldridge. It was during these moments that she felt truly at home, her spirit entwined with the beauty of the earth. But those who knew her best were aware of the shadows that trailed her. Sarah carried burdens from her teenage years, battling the remnants of a rocky relationship with her high school boyfriend that had left her questioning trust and loyalty. Despite these challenges, she forged ahead, her resilience shining through as she focused on building a future filled with purpose. On the evening of her disappearance, she'd planned to take a solitary trek into the woods with Max, hoping to clear her mind after a long week. While she often sought solace in nature, the woods held an unsettling potential, mysterious, vast, and unforgiving. As she walked under the fading light, a sense of ease enveloped her. The stars would soon illuminate her path, a reminder that she belonged to this world. Little did she know, however, that her peaceful escape would turn into a nightmare for those who cherished her. The crime scene. The morning following Sarah's disappearance, the dense fog that clung to the forest canopy seemed to mirror the uncertainty enveloping Eldridge. Thick mist curled around the trees, swallowing sounds and amplifying the eerie silence that had descended upon the town. Local authorities, responding to the frantic calls from Sarah's distraught family, set up a command center at the edge of the woods, ready to coordinate the search. As search and rescue teams combed through the underbrush, the volunteers had turned their apprehensive whispers into an urgent mission. Dogs sniffed the air, straining against their leashes, while flashing lights from patrol cars flickered in the heavy fog like heartbeats stuttering with tension. The community, united in fear and anxiety, remained on the periphery, their eyes darting to every rustle in the underbrush, searching for a sign. Hours turned into an excruciating timeline of anguish until one of the searchers stumbled upon something jarring: a broken collar, adorned with Max's name tag. It lay among the roots of an ancient oak tree, stark against the rich earth, its metallic surface glinting ominously in the muted light. A somber chill settled over the team as they gathered around the find, the implications slowly dawning up. The collar was a grotesque symbol of uncertainty, a thread unspooling in a tapestry of worry. Deep within the woods, beyond the point of discovery, investigators turned their focus to the tree line where the growth tangled thickly over the ground. Disturbances in the undergrowth hinted at a struggle's mole, trampled patches of grass, and the remnants of what appeared to be a scarf caught beneath a branch. Suddenly, the search had transformed. It was no longer merely an operation to find a lost woman. The specter of foul play loomed over the proceedings, casting shadows deeper than any tree could shelter. The early investigation. As afternoon descended into twilight, the command center buzzed with restless energy. Detectives, clad in dark jackets and badges glinting dully in the fading light, gathered to share preliminary findings. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they assessed the crime scene before them, running through a mental inventory of leads and resources, but uncertainty weighed on their shoulders. Lead investigator Detective Clara Morgan, known for her meticulous attention to detail, surveyed the raucous activity around. With 10 years of experience under her belt, she had seen her fair share of missing persons cases, but none felt as personal as this. Sarah was a member of the community, a familiar face at local events, and a well-loved figure among residents. Morgan's resolve stiffened. She knew that they had to find her. Initial interviews with family and friends painted a picture of Sarah's life, her interests, daily routine, and relationships, but nothing flagged any red flags. Sarah had no enemies, and most accounts followed the glistening trail of her positivity. However, probing deeper, Morgan discovered echoes of that rocky high school relationship. While her friends spoke of it in the past tense, she sensed there was more lurking beneath the surface. The detectives dug into Sarah's social media, uncovering a series of messages exchanged months prior. They wrote down names, observed patterns, and focused particularly on one individual, Jason, her ex-boyfriend. Although witnesses claimed there had been no violent confrontation, tension crackled through the air like static electricity as they proceeded with caution. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest, officers kept their heads low while canvassing the area, anxious for the call that would break the silence, perhaps a tip-off or a clue that would illuminate the darkness surrounding Sarah's mysterious disappearance. The dead ends. The investigation stretched into its second week, a time marked by an unsettling rhythm of hope mingled with despair. As search efforts waned, Eleanor and Tom Bennett found themselves caught in an emotional pendulum, oscillating between anticipation and devastation. News updates turned from hopeful leads to frustrating dead ends. Despite all efforts, the quest for answers grew increasingly elusive. Meanwhile, in the shadowy recesses of the forest, the search teams continued their painstaking work, scouring the same trails, checking the same clearings. Each day brought a new cycle of exhaustion as drugs tests were conducted on items retrieved from Sarah's belongings, shirt, clothes, the remnants of her spilled coffee from the place she frequented. Yet every result returned clean, leading nowhere, flaring the anxiety within the family. Meanwhile, initial leads focused on Jason, Sarah's ex-boyfriend, but interviews with him yielded little more than confusion and frustration. He claimed to be on good terms with Sarah and insisted their breakup had been amicable. No evidence of anger or violence surfaced in interviews with mutual friends. Just as unsettling, detectives learned Jason had been out of town during Sarah's disappearance, a fact he affirmed with text messages time-stamped hours before she was last seen. With every potential lead collapsing like a house of cards, authorities turned to analyzing the broader community. Volunteers from Eldridge had shared tales of unusual behavior, dark automobiles frequently seen lingering by the forest's edge, eerie occurrences that rattled daily life. The entire town trembled under the weight of fear, the pervasive belief that danger lurked in every shadow. Search parties exhausted their avenues. Winter began seeping into Eldridge, a chill sweeping through the remaining wisps of hope. Each officer faced their own private reckoning, the pressure escalating within the police department to bring Sarah home weighed heavily. Quiet conversations filled the night skies, punctuated only by the sound of rustling Lavesa town holding its breath, caught between the heat of answers and the cold grip of uncertainty. A break in the case. Weeks passed since Sarah's disappearance, but the bleakness surrounding Eldridge was pierced one crisp morning when an unfamiliar face appeared at the police station. A woman in her late 50s entered the station with a hesitance that belied her resolve. Detective Clara Morgan approached her, clad in an air of determination as she introduced herself. "I'm looking for information," the woman began, her voice steady yet tinged with anxiety. "I think I may have seen something on the night Sarah went missing." The detectives leaned in, hope igniting in the pit of their stomachs. The woman recounted a memory that had been gnawing at her. On that fateful evening, she had been out for a late-night walk when she witnessed a figure just off the trail, a man obscured by the dense underbrush. Despite the darkness, something about his demeanor unsettled her. He had been pacing, glancing at the ground nervously while talking into a cell phone. It felt odd, like he was waiting, she recalled, her eyes vacant, drifting into that uncertain past. The details she provided were scant but illuminating a point of reference where none existed before. The detectives took notes feverishly, burning with a new sense of urgency. Clara Morgan felt the rush of adrenaline as thoughts raced. They would begin canvassing the neighborhood to identify any potential suspects that might connect to the shadowy figure. The woman's account was poised to turn the tide. Officers meticulously scrutinized records of phone calls and activity in the area around the time Sarah disappeared. A palpable energy coursed through the station, igniting hopes that had long felt extinguished. Days faded into nights as detectives monitored leads meticulously. Then came the call that would send shockwaves through the department. "We found something," a voice said over the line, voice crisp and urgent. Morgan and her team rushed to the scene, anticipation drumming in their chests. This was their lifeline, chance to pull Sarah from the grips of darkness that had shrouded her family for far too long. The suspect. The atmosphere inside the police precinct crackled with energized urgency as Detective Clara Morgan and her team processed the new information pouring in. The figure described by the eyewitness had emerged from the shadows, giving them a name: Caleb Thompson, a man in his 30s who had a patchy history with the law involving harassment and disturbances within the community. Investigators scoured through records and discovered that Caleb had been known to visit the periphery of the forest on several occasions, often reported by concerned citizens for acting suspiciously. According to neighbors, he had an erratic demeanor, often seen wandering alone, speaking to himself as though in conversation with phantoms only he could perceive. His presence, unsettling at best, shot frigid spikes of apprehension through the community. With newfound resolve, the investigators sought Caleb out, knocking on doors until they found his small, rundown apartment on the outskirts of town. The structure sagged under the weight of neglect, peeling paint giving way to splintered wood. The door creaked open just enough to reveal Caleb, his sunken eyes darting around nervously at the gathering crowd of law enforcement outside. "Mr. Thompson, we'd like to ask you a few questions," Morgan stated flatly, careful to mask her own trepidation. Caleb's gaze flickered, a momentary flash of something fear, guilt. "Throwing them inside. The walls of his apartment held remnants of clutter that spoke of chaos. Newspapers scattered across the floor, empty takeout containers piled high, and an unsettling collection of nature images plastered on every available inch. As the detectives began their questioning, Caleb's responses were erratic and defensive. He claimed he had been at home that night, merely enjoying the sounds of the forest from his window, though it quickly became evident that his alibi was flimsy, riddled with inconsistencies. A faint whiff of sweat and panic emanated from him as he shifted uneasily in his chair. Morgan pressed further, detailing Sarah's disappearance, the broken collar, and the witness account. Each revelation sent tremors through Caleb, his eyes darkening with what could only be described as a flicker of fear. As his story crumbled and strained under scrutiny, the detectives readied themselves, sensing they were on the brink of gathering something vital, that elusive thread that could link the suspect to the crime, all while hoping it would lead them close to Sarah. The trial, months of preparation, culminated in a silence thick enough to slice through. The trial of Caleb Thompson commenced in the modest courtroom of Eldridge, where tension hung palpable in the air, charged with the weight of anguish and uncertainty. Families, friends, and members of the community filled the wooden benches, their collective breath held in anticipation of justice. The proceedings began in the early hours of a cold November morning, the courtroom illuminated by stark fluorescent lights that cast a harsh glow over the proceedings. Detective Clara Morgan took the stand first, recounting her investigation and the pivotal breakthrough eyewitness account that connected Caleb to Sarah's disappearance. Her voice remained steady, though the memories of sleepless nights poured into her recounting, underscoring the emotional toll on everyone involved. As each witness arrived, the air thickened with emotion. Sarah's parents clutched each other's hands tightly as they listened to testimonies resonate off the aged walls. Each account painted a picture of a vibrant woman who had been robbed of her future. The defense attorney attempted to shake the credibility of the witnesses, introducing doubt like a thief in the night. But cracks began to show in Caleb's narrative, elements of his defense crumbling. The core of the state's case settled upon forensic evidence: the fingerprints found on Sarah's belongings, discovered in Caleb's apartment, along with digital records linking him to the area on the night she vanished. As exhibits were unveiled, a collective shiver spread through the courtroom, the reality setting in that they were just a hair's breadth away from understanding the fate that had befallen Sarah. Closing arguments pushed the emotions to a boiling point. The prosecution urged the jury to remember the faces full of sorrow, the family still grappling with the absence of their daughter. Meanwhile, Caleb's defense clung desperately to maintaining his innocence. Yet his gaze faltered when confronted with the weight of circumstantial evidence. As deliberations began, the courtroom's pulse quickened, the ticking clock echoing the heartbeat of a community bound to the outcome. Hours passed, every minute an eternity of hope and fear. When the jury finally returned, it was the moment everyone waited for. A verdict, guilty. The word hung in the air, crashing down upon the gathered crowd. A tidal wave of relief accompanied the anguished wails of Sarah's family, their years of searching and fighting now vindicated. Yet, even in this triumph, an ache remained a reminder that justice might never truly bring Sarah back. The aftermath. In the aftermath of the trial, the small town of Eldridge was left to grapple with the echoes of anguish and resolution that lingered in the air. A verdict was reached, producing a sense of closure, yet it did little to alleviate the profound sense of loss that enveloped the community. Candlelight vigils dotted the landscape, glowing reminders of the vibrant life that had once thrived within their midst. Sarah's memory blossomed through the stories shared, rippling through the hearts of friends, family, and even strangers. In the months following the trial, the Bennett family found themselves walking a tightrope between grief and healing. They had taken solace in dedicating a local park in Sarah's name, a place where families could gather to celebrate life and nature, the very things Sarah had held dear. As flowers bloomed anew with each season, they were accompanied by whispers of love and hope, ringing through the air as children played beneath the trees. Yet the roots of trauma dug deep. Elena found herself often staring into the distance, lost in the void of what could have been. Tom, in a quiet but steadfast manner, took to journaling, pouring his emotions onto the pages in an attempt to process his sorrow and channel his grief into something constructive. While they had each other, a fragment of Sarah's absence still carved a hollow in their hearts. Though justice had been served, the repercussions rippled far beyond the courtroom walls. Caleb's conviction unleashed a torrent of discussions about safety, trust, and community awareness. Eldridge felt the seismic shifts of deeper introspection as neighbors rallied together, forming watch groups and advocating for educational programs aimed at preventing future tragedy. The community, once cloaked in complacency, began to see strangers not as faceless entities, but as threads woven into the collective fabric of their lives. As seasons changed, newspaper articles chronicled the storybold headlines recapping the case, while intertwined with the journeys of those left behind. Investigative podcasts explored the intricacies of Sarah's story, reaching diverse audiences across the nation. Sarah Bennett became a symbol of resilience, not just for those who knew her, but for countless others reminded of the fragility of life and the profound need for connection. Yet, as the world turned, so did the hearts of those who mourned. The legacy left behind was clear. In her absence, Sarah ignited a passion for community, a reminder that love and vigilance would always triumph over darkness. The echoes of her laughter lingered, intertwining with the sounds of life, the new beginnings born from profound loss. Reflection. As years unfurled like a tattered flag in the breeze, the town of Eldridge continued its quiet struggle, woven together with the threads of shared sorrow and resilience. The shadows cast by Sarah's disappearance remained, but they were joined by a brighter tapestry of community transformed by grief into action. Reflections across the streets often centered on Sarah and the legacy she had forged. Conversations that might have lingered unsaid transformed into determination to cherish one another, to safeguard the love that envelopes a communal life. Eleanor and Tom Bennett remained central figures, routinely hosting gatherings that celebrated Sarah's spirit. Each laughter shared and memory recounted served as a soothing balm over their hearts. In the quiet moments of reflection, they often found themselves marveling at the complexity of emotions tied up in Sarah's story. The pain of her loss settled beside the pride born from the impact her life had left behind, spurring neighbors to protect one another and inviting dialogues that broke the silence around this kind of suffering. This drive reminded them of an important resolution. Every life is precious, and the stories of those who are lost should resonate far beyond their time on Earth. In fitting honor to their daughter, they became committed advocates for victims, working alongside local law enforcement to foster awareness and compassion in the community. Where despair could have taken root, hope blossomed, intertwining threads of remembrance into the very fabric of Eldridge. In quiet moments by the park, where the blooms flourished each spring, the clouds would gather, casting fleeting shadow. Yet, through the gaps in the cloud cover, rays of sunlight would break through, reminding that even in darkness, light would prevail.